And with that, I want to cover the first two things here with the human eye. And these are probably the most important. So the first two things here are blink rate and GHT. GHT stands for gestural hemispheric tendency. And there's no need to write it down. I invented the phrase, and I don't even think you can Google it. Well, maybe you can. And we'll get into that in a second, but blink rate, let's talk about that first. Blink rate is how often you blink. I was just watching a video today called the Dan Brown Masterclass Live on YouTube, where Dan Brown, the author, a guy who wrote the Da Vinci Code, did a live masterclass like 3 days ago. And I love Dan Brown. I love his books. But in the Zoom call, I brought Sarah over to the table, and there was a big problem with Zoom. Somebody that wasn't supposed to be on the screen popped up. Then the host got muted. Nobody could hear his audio. And I showed Sarah today, just a couple hours ago, how Dan Brown had a very consistent a blink rate throughout the entire conversation. And the host of the meeting, his blink rate went from a 15 to a 60 in less than a second. Just to kind of illustrate how fast our blink rate can shift in a second. So blink rate is how often we blink, or how many times per minute, if you want to get a little more scientific about it. But it indicates stress or sometimes relaxation and focus. So the higher a person blinks, the higher the blink rate, the more often the person's blinking, the higher their level of stress. Hopefully that makes sense. So the last time you did something that was really stressful, like for me, I took a math exam in school. I suck at math. Even though I was a ship navigator, I had a calculator there. My blink rate was probably around a 70, an actual 70. And the last time I watched a really good movie, the movie I consistently reference here is called Interstellar with Matthew McConaughey in it. And I was completely engaged for that movie. It had all of my focus and all of my attention. And my blink rate during that movie was probably around a 3 per minute blink rate. And if you think about that, the difference between a 3 and a 70, you could spot that from across a crowded airport. You could spot someone's blink rate. So the lower the blink rate, the more focused, interested, curious, engaged a person is in a conversation. The higher the blink rate, the higher that person's level of stress. You can look around a room and see who in any conversation is more stressed and who is more relaxed. And the moment that you're talking to somebody, we're in H-to-H sales, we're speaking human to human. The moment that you're talking to somebody and you see that blink rate start go up, you just figure out, I just started talking about interest rates or payment terms, and I saw blink rate go up. I know automatically just by this one indicator that I have a 100% reliable indicator that there's a problem. I either deal with it now, deal with it later. I backstep and ask them, is there any questions that you had about this? A lot of people are worried about X, Y, and Z. And the reason it's reliable is because when my blink rate was a 70, my blink rate's a 3, much like yours, we're not aware of it. We never become aware like, wow, I'm blinking more often than normal, unless we have allergies or something like that, which is completely different. And blink rate is incredibly reliable because it's unconscious. And often I get asked the question, if somebody is blinking a lot because of allergies, what do I do? Should I read their blink rate? No. Any behavior that is repetitive in nature should be ignored. And any behavior, this is a quote from my friend Joe Navarro, any behavior that is repetitive is self-soothing. And I love that description. And we don't really need to focus on, is this behavior, does it indicate a concealment or doubt or disbelief? We don't really need to care about it. Is it negative or is it positive? That's kind of all we're really looking for. Blink rate, high blink rate is negative. Lower blink rate is positive. And that would sum that up. So you don't have to count blink rate, but sometimes I do. As a public speaker, I'm up on the stage regularly, making eye contact with people in the audience. And over the course of 15 seconds, if I count how many blinks that I saw in the audience, that is going to tell me, if I multiply those blinks times 4, that's the blink rate per minute of the audience. So I know the less blinks I see, the more engaging and interesting my content is. The more I can capture people's focus and attention and make sure the materials is well presented and well laid out for everybody. And that's why every time you attend any of my courses, the slides are completely different. The way I present things is different every time, based on my nonverbal feedback from the audience. If I see blink rate in the audience go up, I'll change the pitch of my voice. I'll walk across the other side of the stage. I'll change the subject. I'll change the slide. So it's really important for you to be able to identify this. And this is what I would give you as your first large level homework assignment, is to spend as much time as you possibly can pushing this one skill into your subconscious and making it automatic just because you've done it so much. And that's blink rate. So let's quickly talk about GHT before we wrap this session up. GHT is gestural hemispheric tendency. We've all seen the Lie to Me show or the CSI episode or the Law and Order show where they're in the interrogation room and they've got this guy sitting at a table, and they go back into this little room behind the mirror, and they say, well, you know, when I asked him that question, he looked up and to the right. That means he was accessing the creative side of his brain. And that is absolute BS. This is called eye accessing cues. And it wasn't intended to be BS. It was an offering of something that somebody was trying to invent. This is Richard Bandler, John Grinder, who I very, very much admire. But it's since been disproven by hundreds of clinical studies, academic studies. We can't rely on that stuff. It's not real. But GHT is very real. And this is something that you can watch. I've analyzed over 20,000 hours of interrogation video. That number is correct. And GHT happens every time. And what GHT is when a person thinks about something positive or recalls something positive, they typically look one direction to recall the memory, and they'll use that hand more to talk about the story. So if I'm asking somebody about a vacation that they just took and their eyes move that way, it might look like this. They go, oh my gosh, it was fantastic. We all went on this big cruise. And then later in the conversation, I'm asking the person about their ex-spouse that they really don't like. And they go, oh my God, man, I don't want to get into it. And they start using this hand to gesture and start talking about it. That's vitally important to you. And it's easy to identify. Blink rate and GHT, you should be able, by the end of this, probably this week, you should be able to identify blink rate and GHT in the first 30 seconds of conversation. And once you get good, you'll have it in about 5 seconds. Blink rate and GHT. So why is GHT important? It's cool, like, oh, they look that way, but that literally does nothing for us. GHT is important because towards the end of the sale, when I'm asking someone to do something, I'm closing the sale, I'm asking for a confession in an interrogation room, I'm talking to a jury in a courtroom, and I want them to make a decision. That's when we're going to use it. So as I come to the end of this conversation, we're coming towards the close, I'm going to lean the direction that they looked. If they looked that way, according to me, I'm going to lean that way. And that forces their eyes, head, and body to reorient to where they associate with positive things. But I'm only going to do that at the close, because chemicals in the body need a half-life. And that just basically means that if I'm manufacturing serotonin the entire time by continuing to lean that way, and I've done it to the point where we're walking in circles just about over the course of an hour. just trying all this stuff out. But GHT is good, but I would only use it once. And that would be my hard, fast advice on GHT. We're only going to use it once, and it's only going to be right before we start closing, or while we are closing, or asking someone to do something differently. And that's it for this lesson for today.